Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your Midday Market Report Part 2 from LA. Back-to-back weeks, show at 1 o'clock with good friend and colleague Pop DiBiase, the primetime capper, and obviously Mr. Ron at Ace Sports, who has blessed us and graced us throughout the whole college and NFL season. As we slowly wrap up, he reached out and said he's available today as we are now down to the Final Four in the NFL. And I know it's only Tuesday, and I know a lot of people have done a lot of talking already about these games, and it's only going to be compiled day by day by day as we get closer to Sunday and NFL Conference Championship Sunday, which I like this day and that, those two games are than usually the Super Bowl, because lots of times the Super Bowl doesn't live up to the hype, but the two conference championship games do. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Good friend, Mr. Ron at Ace Sports.
Good afternoon, Jeff, from sunny Los Angeles today. Get a little outside time, a little time on the patio. It's back to no rain. So we like that.
We have had 6 days straight of rain. We actually had snow last night, and a good buddy of mine who does meteorology on the side as well just sent me an update, and 1 to 2 inches of rain expected on Thursday. I'm just waiting for Noah's Ark. That's what I'm waiting for at this point. The weekend's over. I said it in our alert. One of two things is going to happen. The Bills are going to roll and the Cowboys are going to upset the Niners, or Joe is going to do what he does and shock the world on the road, and the Niners will find a way to win and most likely cover. What was your thoughts going in, and what are your thoughts today of those two games?
Well, from the Buffalo-Cincinnati game, I thought all along that 6 points was way too much in that game. In fact, I was stunned at that particular line. There's something about Buffalo that they haven't done as expected defensively. If you compare past defenses, Cincinnati was playing at a much higher level. Cincinnati doesn't really rush the passer that much, but Buffalo sloughed off a little without Von Miller there. And even though everybody knew going in there were problems on the Cincinnati offensive line, it's something they compensated for in their game plan. Joe Burrow was getting the ball out at an amazing rate in terms of how fast that ball was released. And given the fact that Buffalo hasn't covered as well as we expected at the beginning of the year, there were receivers open all over the place. Burrow was accurate. They got a tremendous performance out of Joe Mixon, which I didn't expect on the ground. And basically, it's hard to run and pass on Cincinnati. And I'm just not surprised, because we went in thinking that Josh Allen was the more likely quarterback to turn the ball over. He only turned it over once at the end of the game. It was more cause and effect of Cincinnati just having too many weapons and just being too good, and being in a place where the last few weeks they have built their team to a point where they're more than legit. I think we have the best 4 teams in. And that was my take on the Cincinnati Buffalo. The better team won, and it looked like Cincy was going to be the better team in a toss-up game before the game. Now, as far as Dallas and San Francisco, I went in thinking, and I went out thinking the same thing, that Dallas had the matchup defensively that could stop or at least slow down San Francisco. And I think, except for a couple of factors, Dallas would have been the better team I don't know if Mike McCarthy would have gotten the way in the fourth quarter anyway, and somehow San Francisco would have pulled it off. But clearly in the first half, San Francisco was a better team. And like I mentioned to you before we started the show, one play changed this entire game. And or you could say two plays. The play that Pollard got hurt changed everything because Pollard was the way we talked about this last week. Pollard was the guy who was going to stretch the defense and not Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott was going to be a non-factor against the San Francisco defense, but Pollard was going to be a factor. And when he went out, the very next play, Dallas showed an offense that just, oh man, I was looking at it and saying, how could you go empty back at this particular point without, and you're typecasting what you're going to run. And then they threw the interception on the very next play. And then the game changed, their game plan changed. Their field goal kicker had already missed an extra point. So there were some metrics that were going to change. I just thought that interception after Pollard went out changed the dynamic of the game. And at that point, I thought San Francisco was going to win. But I think the defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn, like we talked about last week, he earned the right to be a head coach somewhere, and I think he will be hired in the next week.
I couldn't have tweeted it faster on Sunday Live on that exact play. And I said, you got a minute 18 to go. It's 2nd and 2. Pollard's in the tent. And you got an opportunity, if you had to, run it 3 straight times, get the first down. If the Niners want to use their timeouts, they can. Otherwise, at worst, to line Mar up for a field goal to take the lead at half, which the Niners eventually did. But going back to what you said, almost like the 3-strike theory for Dallas there is the fact that Mayer missed, or his first extra point was blocked. So the mindset is, here we go again. Dak, 2 early turnovers in the first half, and now Pollard gone for the game. We talk about, and you said it perfectly, does Mike McCarthy get in the way? I haven't heard a lot of people criticizing Kellen Moore, and I criticized him, especially in the first half. Their hands were tied going into the second half. You had to almost, like, in 15 minutes figure out, our defense is playing great. They're going to keep us in this game. Why not stretch the field run? I mean, everyone else knows Seattle did it. I mean, Geno Smith looked like Jim Zorn out there, or a young Russell Wilson with Metcalf, with Tyler Lockett. Why was that not used by Dallas?
I guess you'll have to ask Kellen Moore that specifically, but certainly they could have been more creative. I mean, the Pollard loss was critical. I know they feared Bosa in the pass rush, so they're trying different things. I was disappointed they didn't try to get the ball to Gallup. By the time they did, which was early fourth, I think, back-to-back plays, by that time they were down 7, but they acted like they were down 14 with their play calling. You're still down 1 score, but you're not utilizing the entire field that way. I'm disappointed in Kellen Moore. I'm disappointed in what they were doing because that game was there for the taking. Dallas's defense certainly played well enough to win. Purdy was accurate, and there's nothing against Purdy whatsoever. As usual, Shanahan scripted those early plays, and they looked sharp. And Kittle, of course, he's great. There's a lot of weapons on San Francisco's side, but still, you're holding San Francisco to 19 points. You have an opportunity to win. I'm disappointed in the way Dallas went about their business in that particular game offensively. Maybe they got gun shy after Dak Prescott had those 2 interceptions.
Going to switch over to Buffalo. I was on the road for most of the game, and I saw the field. And, you think of Buffalo, you think of snow, you think of guys out there, no shirts on their chests, smashing tables. That was a track that was set up specifically for the Bengals. I mean, even with their O-line issues, as you said, Joe Mixon with a huge, huge game. The separated with this Bengals team, they're able to move the chains when they have to, whether it's Mixon, whether it's P. Ryan. It's not like a gadget play like Kansas City usually does, or Buffalo has no idea. Is it Singletary? Is it Cook? That Cincinnati defense that you and I have talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks. Again, another team under 17 or less. They don't get talked about enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree completely. The Cincinnati D really dictated Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo just wasn't moving. Even Diggs, who, of course, was upset at the end of the game because that's kind of in his DNA, his catches were not significantly impacting the game. They had to throw underneath to him. Cincinnati did a good job of bracketing him, and that really helped in terms of their particular game plan. They wanted to get Cook more involved in the game, but it just wasn't to be. I think regarding the field, one point about the field, and I heard this mentioned, slippery track because the snow wasn't exactly sticking. It wasn't windy, so offenses could still thrive. The issue was the pass rush. Maybe they didn't get traction on the pass rush because it was tough to get that first step going. Maybe the Cincinnati offensive line was benefited just a little by the snow in terms of the overall pass rush. I don't really know that for a fact because Burrow had a good game plan as far as how he was going to release the ball anyway. And if Burrow wants to, he's fully capable of getting outside of the pocket and stretching the defenses, and he can run on occasion too. In fact, I expect him to do that against Kansas City.
We talk about overreaction in our lanes, and we see it a lot. I preach everyone remembers what they saw last. Kind of interesting now because we have a couple more circumstances to bring up. San Fran, Philadelphia, a 1.5 with the 46, now 2.5 with the 46.5. Cincinnati, Kansas City opened up a pick. I actually saw some Kansas City -1s out there. Now 2.5 with the 46.5. Bengals now favored. We'll break down each of these initially. I'll start let's go back to the NFC. A look ahead a few weeks ago was basically a pick 'em. I even heard a few 49ers, maybe -1. Great performance by Philly. Just absolutely dominated the Giants. The 49ers, it was kind of, I don't want to say pedestrian, but they played not to lose. And as you said, they took care of business. 2 games Purdy has played on the road, short week in Seattle, and then a couple weeks later in Vegas. A gentleman on this morning, Julian Edlow from DraftKings, because of the schedule, they only had 7 road games all year, and 3 of them were early when the season started. So give us your thoughts, your numbers, where you are initially with the 49ers and Eagles.
Well, I understand the line moving to 2.5 as opposed to what it was picking before, because 2 things happened last week that caused the line move, in my opinion. First thing is we found out that Hurts was relatively healthy. He was able to run the offense. He ran the ball 9 times. Doesn't sound like a lot because he was averaging 10.5 rushes, but obviously because of the score of the game, he didn't have to run in the second half. So he ran a lot of his plays early. If he's running his regular offense and he's willing to use his legs like he did, then he's back to that dimension that opens up the full game for them. And then they have Smith on the outside. They have Brown on the outside. They have their tight end who's fully healthy now. Sanders. They have a lot of weapons to go with Hurts. It opens up the whole game plan. So now we can move Philly's power rating back to, that final 4 number that it needs to be. It doesn't have to be circled because of injury. And the other thing with San Francisco, in my opinion, is because they were contained a little bit by Dallas, and now they're going to go to another relatively good defensive team in Philadelphia. I think we saw that the point offense slowed down just enough where we can say, okay, let's cool the Jets a little bit on San Francisco's offense. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I think that caused the line to say, hey, wait a second. On paper, the eye test, what you said, what we saw last week, Philly is a slightly better team. If we give 1.5, some people give 2 points for home field in the playoffs. If you think Philly is about a 1 point difference overall in power rating, then the line should be around 2.5. It's not, it shouldn't be 3, but I can certainly understand the 2.5.
Cincy, Kansas City, and I'm just trying to think. I can't remember, and I'm usually sharp with this. I can't remember Mahomes being home and an underdog. Maybe the championship game against the Patriots, Brady's, maybe. I don't know if that was a pick 'em or a one. Again, overreaction, high ankle sprain. It's not an ankle, it's a high ankle sprain. Burrow, 3-0 lifetime. 2.5 Bengals favored. There is no way in holy bleep that will ever reach 3 because the bad guys will be pounded. Chiefs +3. Initial thoughts in this game?
Well, I think we saw some lines being tweeted out. I had some DMs and I was responding back and forth with DMs and some texts. When Mahomes had that ankle sprain and he left the game and Henne came in the game, that changed everything for what the line was going to be this week. That alone changed it. And Cincinnati, not necessarily disrespected, but definitely in ballpark as Kansas City, as Philadelphia and the others. They were kind of the fourth out of the 4 teams until Mahomes went down a little bit. And when Mahomes went down a little bit, I feel bad for those who thought they were going to get line value on Cincinnati again. The best we saw was +3 in game Cincinnati if they were to make it through to play Kansas City. And that was a playable line because +3, if Cincinnati was going to win the game against Buffalo, there was no way that +3 was the right line. Because according to my lines, even with a healthy Mahomes, that line should have been no higher than 2 in the Cincinnati KC game. And once Mahomes goes down to some extent and he's not back in the game, people were wise to take the 3 right then and there. Now, we're going to get more reports as the week goes. Will Mahomes practice? Will he practice sparingly? Can he throw off his left foot? We saw a touchdown that way. Can he throw off his right foot? He can throw. Can he throw sidearm? Can he throw backwards? He can do all that things. But this is now incumbent on the Kansas City defense to play better than they have all year long. And Kansas City is capable of doing that. They tend to rise to the occasion. But we're looking at an overreaction right now at 2.5. On the other hand, Cincinnati is that good. I mean, I think Cincinnati +3 or more was the right play, but now you can't get 3. You know, the best you're ever going to get is maybe back to Pick'em or Cincinnati -1. It changes the whole equation. There's no value left.
For the public, for the D-Gens, obviously there's 2 games. Obviously they're going to play both of these games. Taking it from our perspective, listen, Joe did it last year. He's in line to do it again. I'm not listening to the disrespect card or anything like that. Listen, he has it. He has that moxie. He has it. I'm just saying, it's tough to go against how well they're playing. We talked about that number of 17. Okay, it's at a 46. So currently, I mean, they're saying Cincinnati 24-23, say. Buffalo last weekend was supposed to score 26-27. They're going to play the game run. I mean, do you take a healthy Joe Burrow with a banged-up O-line who's 3-0 lifetime? Or do you say, thank you for the gift. I'm going to roll the dice with Mahomes and pray he makes it for 60 minutes?
No opinion yet for me on this game because I need definitely to see what's going on with Mahomes. I will say that in the last 3 games, all wins by Cincinnati, as everybody's going to say all week long that Cincinnati has beaten KC 3 times. But if you look at those games, those were absolutely either toss-up games or games Kansas City should have won. Kansas City last year at this very time led 21-3 And Mahomes threw that short pass instead of taking the 3 points at the end of the first half. Would have been 24-3. The guy got tackled. They were greedy. They wanted to get to 28-3. We saw that Cincinnati then came back and won in overtime. This year, I think it was early December, Cincinnati was down. Were they down 10 points to Kansas City and came back? It was something where they were down 7 and they came back and scored 10 points in that game, 10 fourth quarter points. Kelsey rare fumble set up the last go-ahead score. So basically, I know Kansas City has lost 3, but in their mind, they think they should have won all 3. So let's throw all that out the window, and we know Kansas City should be confident in this game, and we absolutely know Cincinnati should be confident in this game. Looking at the stat sheet from that game, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Looking at the stat sheet from that game, Mahomes only threw 27 passes in December against Cincinnati's defense, which surprised me. Both teams ran relatively effectively. Joe Burrow was 25 out of 31 against Kansas City in December. I mean, look, Joe Burrow has that it factor. We know that. For those who like to bet props on punts, there were 2 punts in the entire game in December. We don't know what the weather is going to be in this particular one, but basically these teams tend to move the chains. They have an enormous amount of weapons in this game. Kansas City Stadium is going to be rocking. It sure looks like a toss-up game to me at this point.
If the ECSI VIPs in early to mid-November, the Sunday, Jimmy G got hurt. We had given out the Niners. They were, I think, right around 13-1 at that point in early, I think 5-4 at one point, early mid-November. The Bengals, the same thing in early to mid-November. We got it around 13-1 as well. So before the tournament started, we had to figure out, we had to get creative. How do we cover our butts with the Eagles and the Chiefs? So we got creative, Ron. We have Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP at plus 650. And we have Patrick Mahomes, Super Bowl MVP at plus 400. Now, of course, there's no such thing as locks. And if one of those 2 teams does get to the Super Bowl and does win, there's no guarantee that either one of them will be MVPs. But we figured, hey, we technically, Ron, have the market cornered right now.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to do things. I sometimes think ahead that way, but I don't have no pending futures after the season ended. The only thing I did do, as documented, was in week 3, as soon as Trey Lance went down, knowing how poorly I thought the Rams were going to play this year, both Chris and I think we did it during the show. We both took plus 150 San Francisco to win the division. And then I saw the writing on the wall, very happy to see the writing on the wall that my forecast preseason of Cincinnati, that the schedule would hurt them, that all the primetime games would hurt them. Well, that wasn't going to be the case. And Baltimore blowing those leads. So I had plus 225 on Cincinnati to win the division in season and to make the playoffs plus 150, plus 170, both generous numbers. But I'm sitting with nothing in terms of the future now, which I'm happy with, because I've never had a season where the Final 4 all have pretty much the same power numbers. I mean, to me, they're all the same. And I wouldn't be surprised if any one of the 4 moves on. So if you're sitting with 13-1 on something and something else, then you're sitting in a very nice position. And that's great advanced thinking.
Hey, they say the sun shines on a dog every once in a while, Hector wants to know, do you think the snow helped the Cincy O-line last weekend, and there might be weather this weekend too? Thoughts there?
Yeah, I do think that's an area where Cincinnati's O-line had a little bit of an advantage because they could do it that way. But on the other hand, when you power run block the other way, and I believe Cincinnati's run attack averaged 3.8 yards per carry during the season. Now, what does that mean? The league average has gone up the last 2 or 3 years because of quarterback play. there's been an absolutely statistically significant rise in run yards per carry that is clearly a 3-year, it's no longer an aberration. It's a 3-year adjustment because quarterbacks are mobile now. So Cincinnati's 3.8 is so far below the norm that Cincinnati would be considered a bottom third team in yards per carry running the ball. And success against Buffalo. I don't think that was snow driven. To be in terms of they thought they would have a line of scrimmage edge. I think the snow-driven edge was pass protection. And I think Kansas City has the ability with Jones to really disrupt opposing teams, and they will have to throw fast again. I just think that Cincinnati's game plan will compensate for any pass rush because of quickly. And because Joe thinks quickly, I think he'll get stuff done. And one other point I want to make about this is kind of a weird off the wall point, but T. Higgins has gone through a lot of emotional stuff the last 3 or 4 weeks. He was the guy involved in the Hamlin hit. He had to go face Buffalo again last week. I think you're going to see a lot of T. Higgins this week now that they've moved past that game and they moved on to the Kansas City game and they're not playing Buffalo anymore. There's a lot of weapons for Cincinnati. So I think in general, I think the O-line will do their job and Joe Burrow and the game planning will do the rest.
Hector's second question is an intriguing one because I'm running it through my head, and he brings up a good point. He goes, I figure the only team with a QB that may not get the MVP if the Super Bowl is won is Purdy. Value on any other Niner players. Now, the obvious to me initially would be CMC, then I think a Debo. But, the real connection with Purdy has been Kittle's. And then I would flip it on the other side and say maybe Bosa had a big day on the defensive side. I know this is a prop question. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a great question. Thanks, Hector. But the problem is, he's right. Purdy may not win MVP if they go all the way. But the problem is you got 4 guys, like you mentioned. You got Bosa, you got McCaffrey, you've got Kittle, you've got Samuel, any one of which could win the MVP. So I don't know how you pick somebody other than you say, no, Purdy won't win the MVP. So that's the beauty of some of these teams that are still left. A lot of weapons in the arsenal. There's not one guy they have to rely on. Maybe that was Buffalo's downfall, is that they had to rely on Diggs so much, whereas Cincinnati has Higgins, they have Mixon, they have Hurst, they have obviously Jamar Chase, in addition to an elite quarterback, Joe Burrow. And then all these other teams that are left. Philadelphia has great wide receivers at tight end and Sanders. There's a lot of diversity of options on the teams that are left in the playoffs.
Hector, I'll close with this. Usually what I like to do when we're trying to break down like a golf tournament, and if let's say there's a big favorite like a John Rahm is, we will put 2 to 3 units aside and we will make them all the same. Even though Rahm was 6-1, his winning the tournament will pay as much as a 25-1 Colin Morikawa. So what you're trying to do right now, what I might suggest is, I would think off the top of my head, McCaffrey would be the favorite. And then from there would probably go to Kittle / Debo, and then Bosa the wild card. So you could put 1 or 2 units aside and break it up where if one of those 4 does win it, you'll be cashing the same ticket.
I'd also say shop around because there are a lot of offshores and to be honest, a lot of Vegas books who will give you terrible prices on these. The hold for a Vegas casino on some of these future plays is astronomical. That's why I tend not to play them. But if you're in Vegas and you have Circa, for example, or you have some of these offshores that have a theoretical lower hold, you might be able to get a 10-1 in one place and a 6-1 in another. So definitely shop.
The locals, throwing you a little hook and lateral here. The locals have made, they've had enough. Per Bob Kraft, he's seen enough. They get a little quick, I thought, and made sure Mayo stayed. There was rumblings he was going to go to Cleveland. They made sure he did. Almost like a slash assistant, like they might be grooming him when Bill does go off to greener pastures. In comes Mr. Billy O'Brien that I've said since November. He would be coming here as the offensive coordinator for the Pats. Some of the locals saying that ties Brady coming back here. Brady's not coming back here, guys. Trust me on that. He's not coming back here. Thoughts of Mayo and obviously thoughts on O'Brien coming to New England.
Any change, it's kind of like the New York Giants. When and unfortunately, there's a nice parallel there. I mean, the New York Giants fired a few people. They went over to New England as assistants, coordinators, and so on and stuff like that. New England's offense faltered. Addition by subtraction, the ball comes into the New York Giants and they overachieved. Quite frankly, the New York Giants overachieved this year. They were at least 1 year ahead of schedule with the way they performed. Bringing back O'Brien is addition by subtraction, in my opinion, because they are going to be better because they have somebody competent as opposed to the two people that were helping offensively last year. Mayo, I need to see more, but he's certainly on a fast track. You know, the guy who's really on the fast track is Ryans of San Francisco. D'Amico has done wonderful things with that particular team. He would be my first choice as somebody in the next wave of coaches that moves on. And I like to see Mayo do it one more year because Bill Belichick is still, his fingerprints are all over the defense still.
Now, I have to ask you this because obviously, as you said, the defensive coordinator for 49ers is at the top of everyone's list. He has done wonders. He's got a lot of talent there as well. But my question to you is there a parallel with what Salas did there and then moves on to the Jets? Can you see the same, or is this guy regarded even higher than where Salah was?
It's close. The other example I would give in Seattle, because when Pete Carroll's defense, can't remember what it was called, but they had a name for it. When they had all those guys, Sherman and Chancellor and so on, they lost a lot of defensive coordinators, Quinn and so on and so forth. And some performed better than others. And some weren't quite ready for head coaching job. And maybe Salah, he learned a lot. I mean, he had a dead last defense his first year as head coach. And that defense improved markedly. Of course, it helped that they had a killer draft. So I think it's close. I think Ryan, this is a complete off the wall guess, but I would say 5-10% more trust in Ryan's, which is a nice endorsement for a guy who's really young.
How about the Legion of Boom?
Okay, there we go. Thank you. That's what it was.
I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but for some reason that popped in my head. We love to end the show here with the stage to you. You have a lot to get out. Your work is second to none. Your work ethic and approach, I just envy. You know, I like to say I have 35 years of experience in these lanes, which I do, 35 plus, but you have almanacs and almanacs of notebooks of all the work. Yeah. And the proof's right there. I think next year when you come to Vegas to cash all those futures, there's going to be someone waiting for you at the border. That's just my guess.
No, I'm not in the high rent district. I stay under the radar. I don't need to bet the thousands of dollars. So
you're a smart man.
We're okay there. We're okay there. We're having fun with it there. But my wife will appreciate what happens next Monday, because then I start cleaning out all these papers and things and whatever, and I start organizing, and I throw out half the stuff and I store half the stuff, and then I go back to my Excel spreadsheets and I move stuff together and so on. So the spring cleaning starts next week when I have a little bit more time. And I appreciate having a little bit more time. It's been an incredible season, and voicing this out loud and writing about it and so on is so therapeutic, and it really helps me, and it should help everybody that way. But I also look forward to a little bit of downtime and traveling and stuff like that. I want to close with two things. Give you some keys for the San Francisco-Philadelphia game. From San Francisco's side, I think they should have more of a run-heavy approach in this game. I still think you can run on Philly if you dictate it on your own terms. Use Kittle's toughness in the blocking game and then the contested catch game. And then play against Hurts defensively, San Francisco. I think what you want to do is contain Hurts, make him throw from the pocket, make him earn every running yard he gets. I know they have other weapons, but I think it starts with Hurts. If you contain Hurts, then it'll be less likely that the other guys can burn you. And from Philly's side, well, they have 70-something sacks this year, so their ultimate goal has to be to make Purdy uncomfortable. Whatever he's doing, make him uncomfortable. Make him play like a rookie for the first time. Be willing to concede passes. That's what I'd say from Philly. Let them have something here and there, but don't let them hit a big play. Get back to the basics. Play the coverage. Let Purdy have the Purdy have the smaller targets. And if I'm Philadelphia, the number 3 and the number 4 targets that you have, use them versus San Francisco's last line of defense. Don't be afraid to throw to other players because San Francisco's secondary is the most vulnerable part of that team. You're going to get one-on-ones against Quiz Watkins, against Pascal, against Gainwell, and so on. Don't be afraid to look at a secondary target. Those are my initial keys. We'll have more on Friday, but those are my first thoughts there. Finally, I would say I am thinking I'm going to go through with this project. So look for this project. In fact, I will tell you that you will be part of this project when we talk about New England. I want to do an exit report for each team. Might be 15 minutes, might be 10 minutes, might be 20 minutes. And every once in a while, I'm going to have a guest on. I'm going to go back and I'm going to chart the way I looked at the team preseason, what did I uncover during the season, where do I think they are now, what do they need to do, just kind of do it like in 4 stages. What were my keys to the season? It's kind of a self-evaluation, but it's, again, Jeff, you and I talk about the process so much. Chris and I talk about the process so much. Trust the process. So I'm going to, again, let listeners see what my process was during the year and what my process might start out being forward. I'm going to go one by one, every NFL team. And whenever I have somebody special, like you cover New England, we're going to do that. I definitely want Chris's thoughts when we talk about the Lions and some of the other people I'd like to line up for their favorite team that they cover. Really looking forward to doing kind of a verbal dissection of each team. New uncharted territory for me, so let's see how it goes.
Oh, we can't wait. As you were speaking, Russell the Sailor says Bet Online has Jeff Saturday as the favorite to land the Colts job. He asked, can either of you give me a virtual pinch to wake me up from the nightmare that is Colts fandom? That was number 1. He follows up by saying Jim is going to do it. Jeff will bring in Dan Ozlowski, UConn grad, by the way, as OC. Hate it, but my crystal ball doesn't lie. Thoughts with them keeping Saturday?
Wow. I think Jeff Saturday was very much overmatched in his short time there. It's funny, if Jeff Saturday had been groomed, if you say, okay, he starts out in the NFL as an offensive line coach, obviously he was a Hall of Fame, player at his position along the offensive line. He could teach a lot of people that way. If he got groomed and he took one step, then he took the next step, then he took the next step, and then he's a head coach, no problem whatsoever. I've seen a lot of good offensive line coaches in the league. Maybe they're not great head coaches, but the former Oakland Raiders team, they had a head coach, Callahan, who's a tremendous offensive line coach. There was one that was working with Tennessee, and he's worked with Pittsburgh, Munchak, who is a tremendous offensive line coach and added a lot of value in terms of his coaching ability. But going from nothing to head coach, I would be in a division that's there for the taking. I think Jeff Saturday is not the right person for the job at this present time.
And looking at that division and seeing the strides that the Jaguars made in the last 6 weeks, and then you got a Tennessee team, looking for a quarterback, a lot of tread off the tires with O'Henry, lacking a wide receiver other than Treylon Burks.
Yeah.
As you says, it's there for the taking. The Texans, new coach, new OC, looking again potentially for a quarterback. I think you're spot on there. When you have Jonathan Taylor, when you have Pittman, when you have a defense that's pretty damn good, I don't think you can go short and just be I don't even know the proper words here, Rod. Simple-minded by just hiring your friend here, because you had it for 6 weeks or however long he was there. It didn't work.
Yeah, it certainly didn't work. Obviously, it starts with that huge comeback Minnesota made. At that point, when you're up 33-0, you're not playing the other team. You're playing clock and team. And the fact that he had no idea what to do in the head seat. And you could blame the coordinator, but you can't blame the coordinator because the coach can dictate exactly what you're going to do in those spots. This is how we want to run clock. This is how we want to still be creative, but run clock. There were just so many miscues and so many decisions that he had to walk back in terms of 4th and 2s and go for a field goal or not go for a field goal. It's a situation where he was inserted and he had to learn. It's like learning French in a week or something, and then going to live among, in a neighborhood that only speaks French, not in the tourist areas. You just can't do it. And maybe with the off season, he will get better at this, but it's a stretch to say that they should be able to find somebody better to do the job right now.
If you're not following him, please follow him at Ron Ace Sports on Twitter. Thanks to all the guests, all the questions, Russell Saylor, Hector. Hopefully we were of some value and help there. If you have any questions, come on, reach us on Twitter at EC Sports Invest or again at Ron Ace Sports. Ron, I can't thank you enough. You made Tuesdays all year so much more fun, so much more educational. I learned so much in 1 year. I'm just hoping, if available, we can run it back again next year.
Well, everybody stay healthy. I've had a surge of good health over the last few months after several missteps. So let's stay healthy. We'll recharge the batteries. We'll see what's up. A lot of stuff going on, but appreciate the chance to be on the show and talk football. It's a whole mess of fun, and it helps crystallize my ideas. And hopefully with some of the process stuff that we talked about, that it was helpful to your listeners and viewers as well.
And I'll be here anxiously awaiting whenever you need me for the Patriots report. I will make sure I have all the bells and whistles for you. So from myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, from Ron at Ron A Sports, it's been a pleasure. Guests, amazing today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone, enjoy yourselves. 2 games on Sunday, week off, something called the Super Bowl the following Sunday, something like that. So we'll see. But we'll see you soon, guys.